Welcome, welcome. Started looking around, so I thought I'd fill you guys in. I think this is not the tab. Oh no. Here. Come back to that. Here. Okay, I was basically Google Scholar searching, and yeah. So around topics. Let's go through these tabs I opened. It's been at least an hour or two since I opened them, so it's a little vague on what happened. But recently we're going through this paper. The answers are blowing in the wind. And I just kind of have this list of events in Australia that are important. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Archean zircons in the Cretaceous strata of the Western Canadian Cordillera. The Baja BC hypothesis fails a crucial test. Let's see if I can find this. I don't know if I tried to find the paper. Whatever. Okay. Point is, the magnitude of late Mesozoic terrain translation along the western North American continental margin is controversial. Paleomagnetic data suggests more than 3,000 kilometers of dextral displacement of the insular superterrane and associated assemblages between 74 and 50 million years. Radiometric dating. Conversely, geological evidence, or I would respond, or resistance to facts. Not even evidence, but just resistance to facts. And like seeking alternative explanations. Basically, conversely, the present explanation that we hold is not compatible, is more compatible with the data that we see, because we haven't bothered to consider how the data can be explained by the alternative model. We've just decided, well, this model we already have explains all this data. That one that just is developing in its infancy hasn't been applied to all this data, so obviously geological evidence is more compatible with the interpretation that we've held all along before seeing the evidence that proved otherwise. Okay, so this the argument for why it fails the crucial test. So of course I wanted to see what is the evidence. Let's see what the evidence is. Precambrian cratonic rocks older than 2.5 billion years are restricted to northern latitudes in North America, and the presence or absence of Archean zircons within easterly derived Cretaceous strata has been proposed as a crucial test of the major translation hypothesis. There is no plausible source of Archean and early Proterozoic zircons found in the region. And then they put some dates. Incompatible with the Baja BC hypothesis. Okay. You mean like Australia as the source? Because it was adjacent, so it was. It's just we're not considering the source. It's basically because of plate tectonics, we've separated the actual source to be across the ocean, so it can't be the source because of plate tectonics, even though it was adjacent, because the Earth actually expanded. But because of plate tectonics, we cannot put the actual source adjacent, and so as a result, there is no plausible source of these zircons. The end. Baja BC theory has been disproven, and that's pretty much what this paper's purpose is. That's what they're getting at. I I can't see the totality of it, but let's see. And I just basically provided the actual source is Australia region is the source. Okay. Because that's what we've been seeing is Australia is closely tied to what's going on in this region. Where the debate centers on the Baja BC hypothesis, paleomagnetic data from stratified and plutonic rocks from the insular and intermontane superterranes, as well as Rangelia, which I think is part of those, so maybe that is accounted for there, suggest major northward translation of these rocks relative to North American craton during late Cretaceous. Yes. They cite 1996-97, but I know this theory date goes back further, which really is evidence that they haven't really researched it that thoroughly, no offense. Because scientifically, we're supposed to reference like the origin of the idea, and this is not the 96 is not the origin of this. This is just like a paper along the way that's being referenced, 2 papers. Okay, data from the intermontane superterrane indicate. Basically, my point is their thinking is that this Baja BC theory is false, and let's find some evidence and we're gonna apply it. But they haven't bothered to look at the evidence for the Baja BC. That's the issue, is they haven't bothered to look at the evidence for the Baja BC hypothesis, as is evidenced by the lack of reference to the actual origin of the hypothesis. And so it just shows they haven't done a thorough enough investigation. Pardon me. So when they saw an anomaly, rather than considering ways that it could still be applied to a Baja BC interpretation, although it kind of needs an expanding Earth model to be part of it, and maybe that's why it was so impossible to even like envision for them, and they did consider it, it's just there was no possible envisioned source, because for certain in there, like there literally was no. Could it be because I'm thinking in plate tectonics and the Earth expanded, because we don't teach that alternative, because we're not allowed to know about it, because it's the actual truth, first of all. And it would mean there's a lot of things we're wrong about, and we can't admit that, because then it's a power thing. Gotta understand it's a power thing. The people in control of the narrative don't want to lose control of the narrative, because then they don't have the power and capacity to shape the world, to pursue the avenues that they feel most basically essential for a pursuit, which maybe is just love is the way, and not even any of this at all. And I will say that, and maybe we should figure that out, though, because maybe none of it's right, but it's this alternative of the expanding Earth. It just continues to like boom, boom, boom. It just makes sense with every new consideration, just adding nuance, not in any way disproving anything. It just literally clears things up. So like for that to be wrong is a little unlikely in my mind, but that's my mind. Maybe the reality is that's not what's going on, and there's a lesson in all of this that I'm meant to learn, and I'm being used to display that lesson to the world in a way that is everyone gets to see and learn from my mistakes, if that's what's going on. I don't know. Oh God. Okay. Data from the intermontane superterrane indicate northward translation between 90 and 55 million years of 1100 plus or minus 600 kilometers according to Irving, which is these people. So again, dating a so that even is a previous work of theirs. I mean, this at this point should have just, in my opinion, referenced the original paper. Apologies, dudes. I know I'm being real critical, but I'm just being critical of the way we do, and it's not necessarily related whatsoever to the actual author, so apologies. No, it's not. Someone wrote this, and if they see this, will not appreciate my casual critiquing of their work at first glance. Okay. But that's the reality is it's like where is the reference to the like when I did my first paper I was citing Newton because that's where it originated. I went to the actual reference. Like even with gravitational lensing, which is like if I search for gravitational lensing, Einstein will be the source, not just here, but anywhere. Newton said it, dudes. That's what I mean. Perfect example, though. It's literally the perfect example where we don't even know that Newton said this before Einstein because we're just such fans of Einstein rather than the truth, which is Isaac Newton predates Albert Einstein because he lived and died before Albert Einstein. And so anything that he ever did like would be attributed to him if over Einstein if they both did it, if they both said it. But because we want to like bend thing towards Einstein over Newton, noobs. That's what happens when we separate philosophy and science. Natural philosophy becomes science and philosophy, and they just diverge and separate and become totally different paths. Where over here we're like derp derp and like no thought, just force fitting equations. And over here we're just unaware of like, yeah, they're doing fine. Just what are we doing in philosophy? I don't even know. We're not even thinking about like the totality of things anymore because it's disconnected from science. Science is like hard. I'd rather just think. I don't need to think about like the complexities of physics and geology. That's not really philosophy. Okay? That's not. But let's say Isaac Newton, does not the sun bend its rays something or other? Let's see, the quarries. There it is. Quarry 1. Not Quarry 47 even. I guess there's how many quarries? 31. Not even Quarry 31. All you needed to do was read Quarry number 1. And let's see, what does it say? Do not bodies act upon light at a distance, and by their action bend its rays? And is not this action strongest at the least distance? Boom. Gravitational lens, dudes. False. Because we're doing the same exact thing. Not even like getting to the roots of what's going on and just being like, that can't be. Let me explain why that can't be. They keep thinking that can be. Get some reason that ain't so. Okay, look at these. Look at these zircons right here. Crucial test failed. Not so. Let's move on. Next. Not failed, though. Next. Oh, I'm an ass. I'm so sorry, guys. I know. I was thinking I need to stop being an ass, and here I am doing it again. I don't know what to do, though. Like, be right. Stop fucking being casual. No offense. It's all the necessary grounds upon which I walk. So, I mean, the shit I say. That's all I can say about that. Okay. New ties between the Alexander terrain and Rangalia. Rangia? Let's look at that one too. Cordillera, Rangia pronunciation. It doesn't just have one. I don't really care that much. I'll wait till I hear someone say it again. I've heard it enough times that I should actually remember it. But in short, this one basically ties these two units, the Alexander terrain and Rangalia, together. Maybe let's click this. Is that what this was? I don't know. New ties between, okay. And when was it? Basically, they say that at some point, I want to say 200 something million years, they merged. They were separate before, but then they merged. Rocks in the Alexander terrain and Rangalia are traditionally shown to be separated by the Duke River fault. This fault has been protracted deformation has a protracted deformation history that includes oblique early Cretaceous thrusting, possible latest Cretaceous to Paleocene strike slip displacement, and Miocene to present northeast direct fault. It is a young feature that is not representative of the original terrain boundary. Fuck. Oops. Somewhere, I feel like I tried to like put it on the information so I could remember what I wanted to talk about. And I'm pretty sure I found something about that. I'll come back to this. I found something of essentially what seems to be happening is the current maybe brings Alexander along, and then it accretes. So essentially it's an accretion onto Rangalia, Alexander. Let's see if maybe, is this it? No. Let's find accretes. Accretionary history. The accreted terrains. Little is known about the relationship between the Alexander terrain and Rangalia prior to accretion to the Rentian margin. Represent new high-precision UPB zircon chemical abrasion, isotope dilution, thermal ionization, mass spectroscopy, ages, and geochemical and stratigraphic data that indicate, here we go, this should be sufficient, that indicate that Rangalia and the Alexander terrain shared a tectonic setting and geological history by at least the latest Devonian. The new data indicate that the Alexander terrain, at least in part, formed the basement to a portion of Rangelia, and thus the two terrains must be thought of as one entity by the latter part of the Paleozoic when considering paleogeographic reconstructions. Okay, let's see. Devonian is... So pretty early on in the process, this chunk gets like lodged at Rangelia. That is the Alexander terrain, according to this paper. Which seems this paper has a feel. I know it's a feel, dude, a feel of validity. I know after what I just said, it's ridiculous. Okay. By the latter part of the Paleozoic, which I believe ends in 252. Yeah. Basically, by 252, it has accreted to Rangelia, the Alexander terrain, and like slid under it, I believe it said. Formed the basement too, so it basically was... That was sitting there, came along, hit it, and slid under it to form a basement, and so something of that nature is participating. I'm not sure where the Alexander terrain is coming from or anything of that nature, but that's just my... Okay, so let's move on past that one. Here's a paper. I searched within it for that word. So this is passive margin prolonged volcanism East Australian plate outbursts, progressions, plate controls, and suggested causes. Okay, so I just thought, well, let me just see if I search for this, and I found this section. So I thought I'd read this section. I believe that's what was going on. The prolonged basaltic volcanism along eastern Australia over the last 100 million years followed collapse and fragmentation of the East Gondwanan Cordilleran or Cordilleran type margin. So of like a similar nature, which is reminiscent of this, especially here. Let me pull up this one. Especially here, similar nature. There's a central unit, a W-like structure, and a W-like structure inverse. One's an island, one's body of water. A large, like, basin structure, generally similar, just similar structure where there is this like type nature to across this boundary point where stuff on one side went over there, stuff on the other side was like accreted as new continental crust. It's seemingly one side was accretion of new continental crust. The other side was the opening of the Pacific, so that then the stuff beyond that side just got moved away. It rested upon the slab of oceanic crust that was being formed in this region, basically around it, that had an opening in it. And so when it like burst away over here, the whole slab slid away, while over here was accretions going on. Oh yeah. So yeah. As absolute plate motions in the Pacific Phoenix convergence decreased between 105 and 90 million. Remember, this is Australia, and these are very important time frames in Western North America. This initiated changes in the mantle wedge buoyancy and trench rollback, causing rifting and marginal basin spreading. The previously subducting Pacific slab was overrun by the Australian plate and now resides under the Australian Antarctic depth anomaly, southwest of eastern Australia, where Pacific-type mantle is migrating west into Indian Ocean-type mantle. Okay, let me see. Let's just move on. I can't remember. Maybe I'll just scroll through this. I think that was the main thing I wanted to bring up in this one. I was just kind of, here's that hotspot they were just mentioning. Here's generally speaking where this current is flowing. Here. All those super volcanoes up leading up to the boundary, where there's a silicic large igneous province named Whit something. Whit Sunday? Oh yeah. 65 million, which is a very important date. So for them to even label it, I don't, maybe that's just because it's important that they used it as a marker, but it may be that something substantial was going on in that time frame. I'm not sure. Let's see. Plate movement map showing past plume line positions colored. Circle. Reconstructing at increasing 10 million year intervals northwards from 90 million. The Coral Sea Ridge and Cato Trough, this region around 65 million, spreading ridge system double line and triple point position stars are shown for the 65 million year position. Note close correspondence of the 65 million. Sorry if you guys can't quite read it on there. Guess I can move me up there now. Okay, that's better. Note close correspondence of the 65 million year line to the Coral Sea Cato Trough Rift margin initiated about that time, closed and open star triple points. Progressive tracks from points along Tasman Sea margin rift zones from 80 million. Indian Ocean hotspots are also indicated. Let's read that again. Progressive tracks from points along Tasman Sea margin. I'm not sure what the colors are. Let's go back here. Plate movement map showing past plume line positions. Colored circles with tracks. Tracks using, okay, here, one track. The tracks use an Indian Atlantic Ocean hotspot reference frame. One track, purple circles, is based on a Pacific hotspot reference frame for comparison. Oh, I see. Not sure why there's 3 tracks, but this is pretty much just, I mean, this, I'm so surprised that this right here, like, how have we not began to correlate them? I guess it's because we need to see this as being caused by currents. Once we see that there was a current that flowed through here and shaped the region and, like, analyze the currents on an expanding Earth model, then it very quickly becomes apparent that there is like a current related to what's going on here and here. Okay, so 0 million. So it looks like the boundary even, we're probably following some sort of boundary inward as the pressure releases back this way. But this seems important. Okay, so let's move on. But noted that this Coral Sea Ridge, this is important. Okay, I found this interesting. Another recently, this is kind of like a digression though. It's kind of more related to my quakes video and my anything about earthquakes, so I should probably put this in my earthquake playlist. Indonesia. Basically, in that video, I was looking at Mount Pinatubo, which 1991 volcanic eruption, and they mentioned in the Wikipedia article that there was an earthquake over here that moved over, in my opinion, caused probably some kind of like crust of the overlayer to like fell off and like hit the ground and the ground shook basically, the underlayer, but that caused like shaking in a way that something of that nature, where at the ground level though was mantle lava material that then was literally like a shock wave, like a tidal wave, started moving. But it essentially seemingly focused from like across the way and went to like a boundary where it went to the boundary and then along the boundary until basically it collided at a more precise point of exactly here to then erupt here. Something of that nature. So I had that thought because the article was like, is there a relationship? We're not sure. Then I saw this, and I started to kind of looking around here, where they mentioned, I believe it mentioned this, yeah, it mentioned both of these things. The years 2006 and 2010 are years that have been noted and memorized by most people of Jogja and surrounding areas as years of disaster because of the occurrences of the Jogja earthquake and Merapi eruption. Both geological hazard events are traumatic for most people, especially for ordinary people. So these are like events that occurred. So I was like, that's interesting that they were like in the same location and both like pretty major events, like both of them. One was a major earthquake, one was a major eruption. That's like they parallel one another in terms of like how big the earthquake is, how big the eruption is. It seems at times, maybe not all the time, but like it seems like there can be a correlation like that when there's like perhaps when there's like a lake, river, a body of still molten magma below the crust in that region that's just like waiting for currents to like cause perturbations through, and then it like carries the waves along that then build and accumulate, but then like get focused by the body of the like container to a like point that causes an eruption pretty much, and just transfers energy. So this volcanic eruption is late October 2010, whereas the earthquake that was mentioned is all the way back in 2006. This was a large on this. Mount Merapi lies nearby, and during its many previous historic eruptions, large volume lahars and mud flows and volcanic debris flowed down its slopes where settlements were later built. This unconsolidated material from the stratovolcano amplified the intensity of the shaking and created the conditions for soil liquefaction to occur. Inadequate construction techniques and poor quality materials contribute to major... Okay, so there's... If I go to volcano... Triggered evacuation. Expected a large eruption to follow. The earthquake occurred instead. Wait, what? 2006. There was a pyroclastic flow at the 2010 eruption place, which then seemingly triggered the this earthquake. Which then is maybe like my thought was maybe like, let's go to it. It's over here. It's right around here in this region. But like if there's a volcano here that essentially things are like coming out of, you know. I just drew this yesterday, so it's oddly fitting. Where I drew basically a like initially a volcano that's like it seals up and has like a blockage but then the current is trying to go through, so it manages to like create an opening. But then like the pressure is released, so then things start to like fall back in, so like that kind of thing. So maybe like it erupts, but then when it does so, like things also fall back in, and that causes it to like first of all be an earthquake for the like collapsing of things into the region of the volcano, but also to potentially lead to a like tremor of like slow ripples outward. So my thought was, what if like this island, to a degree, behaves as like a container where like it drops ripples like material into the basin at basically this kind of basin, like into the lowest level practically, that still has some degree of solidity or something of that nature. Drops it into that though, and it has like lakes of lava that then it travels through, but then it physically bounced back. That's essentially what I was getting at. Like it travels out of the island to the boundary, but then everywhere and came back. It is kind of generally central of the island, central Java, where maybe if there's earthquakes here, they travel to like the energy propagating underneath. Like is able to travel down in the here, but then it bounces back, but it's simultaneously going the other way and bouncing back, generally speaking, so that it collides generally around here, and like the actual precise path is through Mounts. Is that the place? Marapi? Let's find Mount Marapi now. Marapi? I don't know. Oh. The one with all the stuff on the side. Like it's even got a sort of like a boundary row of volcanoes. Not just one, but like where the currents go out and come back and like collide along a distance. Kind of like a maybe seems plausible that there's some relationship to that. Okay, with that, let's move on to the next one before I get too caught up because it's already 40 minutes. This I just found really crazy. I was like, what the? It's called the Tully Monster. That's just Tully Monster. This is what I kept seeing. I don't know. There's like fossils of that were like this. It's called a true creature, but like the evidence, it's kind of similar to ammonites. Like there's probably a lot of things that are actually caused by current flows that we just think are caused by our fossils because they look like living things, but that's how currents like are capable of doing that kind of thing. Okay, let's move on from that thing. I just thought it was interesting. Okay. Late Jurassic intraplate faulting in eastern Australia, a link to subduction in eastern Australia and plate tectonic reorganization. So, okay, let's just see. What do we see here? Eastern Gondwana was subjected to subduction processes during the Middle Late Jurassic. Let's just see. Jurassic period. Middle to late, so let's say 175 to 145, I don't know. How these processes affected intraplate deformation in eastern Australia is poorly understood. We show a major range of geochronological ages at 163 to 152 plus or minus in million years, indicating that the Demon Fault was active during the late Jurassic. This period partially coincides with the middle late. I just saw this fish today. Whoa. It was it just looked weird. It's like a random Facebook post ad or something. Indicating that the Demon Fault was active during the late Cretaceous or Jurassic. This period partially coincides with the middle late Jurassic deposition of widespread asphalt tuffs. Middle late Jurassic. So in that 160 in this range, presumably. Fuck, I muted myself. How long has it been? I think it's only been 10 minutes. I guess I'll stop here. Sorry, guys. So what I was saying, I guess I should check how long I was muted. I don't want to lose another hour. Be like, if it's more than 10 minutes, I'm gonna be pretty sad. I can maybe edit out what I was muted and just call it here and start like a new after that from where it was and just be like, oh, well, okay, I'll do that. Peace. Or maybe just not edit it. Be like, oh, sound muted from here to here. Don't bother to listen. Because next one. Okay.